Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Hello, all that jazz. My name is Josh Litman, and I have directed the play that you're about to see with my wonderful co-director, Patrick. Excuse me, just one moment, guys. Patrick! Get out here! Patrick Barfoot! Marco! Patrick! Oh. This is gonna be a little bit awkward, guys. Sorry about this. Hey there, Patrick. Hey.
Mom, I thought it was gonna be a snow day.
Yeah. Yeah, get out of there! The show is starting. Come on, man. Get out. Careful, there's tea on the table. Please, how long have you been in there for?
I think since the last show.
Since the last show? There's a full house here. Sort of.
We start again?
Yeah, let's start again.
All right. Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Patrick Barfoot.
And my name is Josh Litman.
And this is the last night we have to show you guys the
Importance of Being Dave.
No.
Jim?
Bert and
Reynolds.
Oh, okay. Read my lips, okay?
Irving?
No! Okay. A truthful disposition.
The Importance of Being Honest.
Okay, no, okay.
That's not right.
We have directed The Importance of Being Earnest. Aren't you glad we have two directors?
I should have known that, huh?
Speaking of another director,
Everybody, Jonathan Blankenstein. Everybody, Jonathan is our musical director. Guys, all the music you're about to hear tonight, during the show, has been composed and written by this man right here. All right, it is completely original music, so please give him a hand.
everyone please turn off their cell phones.
And other than that, we hope you enjoy the show. Patrick, how did you?
Oh, can I go back in there?
Dude, we should watch the show. All right, like, how did you even fit in there anyway?
Well, my family's contortionist.
And you guys enjoy the show.
playing, Lane?
I didn't think it polite to listen, sir.
I'm sorry for that. I don't play accurately. Anyone can play accurately, but I do play with wonderful expression. As far as the piano is concerned, sentiment is my forte. I keep science for life.
Yes, sir.
Speaking of the science of life, have you got the cucumber sandwiches cut for Lady Bracknell?
Yes, sir.
By the way, then, I see from your book that on Thursday night, when Lord Shorman and Mr. Welling were dining with me, 8 bottles of champagne are entered as having been consumed.
Yes, sir. 8 bottles and a pint.
Why is it that at a bachelor's establishment the servants invariably drink the champagne? I ask merely for information.
I attribute it to the superior quality of the wine, sir. I've often observed that in married households, the champagne is rarely of a first-rate brand.
Good heavens, is marriage really so demoralizing as that?
I believe it is very pleasant, sir. I myself have had very little experience of it up to the present. I've only been married once, and that was in consequence of a misunderstanding between myself and a younger person.
I don't know if I'm much interested in your family life, Lane.
No, sir, it is not a very interesting subject. I rarely think of it myself.
Very natural, I'm sure. That will do, Lane, thank you. Lane's views on marriage seem somewhat lax. Really, if the lower orders don't set us a good example, what on earth is the use of them? They seem, as a class, to have absolutely no sense of moral responsibility.
Mr. Ernest Worthing.
How are you, my dear Ernest? What brings you up to town?
Oh, pleasure, pleasure. What else should bring one anywhere? Eating as usual, I see, Algy.
I believe it is customary in good society to take some slight refreshment at 5 o'clock. Where have you been since last Thursday?
In the country.
What on earth do you do there?
When one is in the town, one amuses oneself. When one is in the country, one amuses other people. It is excessively boring.
And who are these people you amuse?
Neighbours.
Got nice neighbours in your part of Shropshire?
Perfectly horrid. Never speak to one of them.
Oh, immensely, you must amuse them. By the way, Shropshire is your county, is it not?
Shropshire? Of course. Hello. Why all these cups? Why cucumber sandwiches? Why such reckless extravagance in one so young? Who's coming to tea?
Oh, merely Aunt Augusta and Gwendolyn.
How perfectly delightful.
Yes, that's all very well, but I'm afraid Aunt Augusta won't quite approve of your being here.
Or may I ask why?
My dear fellow, the way you flirt with Gwendolyn is perfectly disgraceful. It's almost as bad as the way Gwendolyn flirts with you.
I am in love with Gwendolyn. I have come to town expressly to propose to her.
I thought you would come for pleasure. I call that business.
How utterly unromantic you are.
Well, I don't really see anything romantic in proposing. It is perfectly romantic to be in love, but there is nothing really romantic in a definite proposal. Why, one may be accepted. One usually is, I believe. But then the excitement is all over. The very essence of romance is uncertainty. If I ever get married, I'll certainly try to forget the fact.
I have no doubt about that, my dear fellow. The divorce court was specially invented for people whose memories are so curiously constituted.
Oh, there is no use speculating on that subject, my dear fellow. Divorces are made in heaven. Please don't touch the cucumber sandwiches. They're ordered specially for Aunt Augusta.
You've been eating them all the time.
Well, that is a different matter, my dear fellow. She's my aunt. Have some bread and butter. The bread and butter is for Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn is devoted to bread and butter.
Very good bread and butter it is too.
My dear fellow, you need not eat as if you're going to have them all. You act as if you're married to her already. You're not married to her already, and I don't think you ever will be.
Why on earth do you say that?
Well, in the first place, girls don't marry the men they flirt with. Girls don't think it right.
No, that is nonsense.
It isn't. It is a great truth. It accounts for the extraordinary number of bachelors that one sees all over the place. In the second place, I don't give my consent.
Your consent?
My dear fellow, Gwendolyn is my first cousin. And before I can allow you to marry her, you will have to clear up the whole question of Cecily.
Cecily? What on earth do you mean? What do you mean, Algy, by Cecily? I don't know anyone of the name Cecily.
Bring me that cigarette case Mr. Worthing left in the smoking room last time he dined here.
Do you mean to say you've had my cigarette case this whole time? Well, I wish to goodness you would have told me. I've been writing frantic letters to Scotland Yard about it. It's very nearly offering a large reward.
Well, I wish you would offer one. I happen to be more than usually hard up.
There's no sense in offering a large reward now that the thing is found.
That is rather mean of you, Ernest, I must say. However, it makes no matter, for now that I look at the inscription inside, I see that the thing isn't yours after all.
Of course it's mine. You've seen me with it 100 times. And you've no right to read what's written on the inside. It's a very ungentlemanly thing to read a private cigarette case.
It is absurd to have a hard and fast rule about what one should read and what one shouldn't. More than half of modern culture depends on what one shouldn't read.
I'm well aware of the fact, and I don't propose to discuss modern culture. It isn't the sort of thing one should talk about in private. I simply want my cigarette case back.
Yes, but this isn't your cigarette case. This cigarette case is a gift from someone of the name of Cecily. And you just said you don't know anyone of that name.
Well, if you want to know, Cecily happens to be my aunt.
Your aunt?
Yes, charming young lady she is too. Lives at Tunbridge Wells. Just give it back to me, Alfred.
Yes, but why does she call herself Little Cecily if she is your aunt and lives at Tunbridge Wells? From Little Cecily, with her fondest love.
My dear fellow, what on earth is there in that? Some aunts are tall, some aunts are not tall. Surely that is a matter an aunt should be allowed to decide for herself. You seem to think that all aunts should be like your aunt. That is absurd. For heaven's sake, just give me back my cigarette case.
Yes, but why does your aunt call you her uncle? From Little Cecily with her fondest love to her dear Uncle Jack. There is no objection, I admit, in an aunt being a small aunt, but why an aunt, no matter what her size may be, should call her own nephew her uncle, I can't quite make out. Besides, your name isn't Jack at all. It is Ernest.
It isn't Ernest, it's Jack.
Well, you have always told me it was Ernest. I've introduced you to everyone as Ernest. You answer to the name of Ernest. You look as if your name is Ernest. You are the most earnest-looking person I ever saw in my life. It is perfectly absurd you saying your name isn't Ernest. Why, it's on your cards. Here is one of them. Mr. Ernest Worthing, B4, The Albany. I'll keep this as a proof your name is Ernest if ever you try to deny it to me, or to Gwendolyn, or to anyone else.
Well, my name is Ernest in the town and Jack in the country. The cigarette case was given to me in the country.
Yes, but that does not account for the fact that your small Aunt Cecily, who lives at Tunbridge Wells, calls you her uncle. Come, old boy, you had much better have the thing out at once.
My dear Algy, you talk exactly as if you were a dentist. It is very vulgar to talk like a dentist when one isn't a dentist. It produces a false impression.
Well, that is exactly what dentists always do. Now go on, tell me the whole thing. I may mention that I've always suspected you of being a confirmed and secret Bunburyist, and I'm quite sure of it now.
Bunburyist? What on earth do you mean by Bunburyist?
I'll reveal to you the meaning of that incomparable expression as soon as you are kind enough to tell me why you're Ernest in town and Jack in the country.
Well, produce my cigarette case first.
Here it is. Now produce your explanation, and pray, make it improbable.
My dear boy, there is nothing improbable about my explanation at all. In fact, it is perfectly ordinary. Old Mr. Thomas Cardew, who adopted me when I was a little boy, made me in his will guardian to his granddaughter, Miss Cecily Cardew. Cecily, who addresses me as her uncle, out of motives of respect that you could not possibly appreciate, lives at my place in the country under the charge of her admirable governess, Miss Prism.
And where is this place in the country, by the way?
Now, there is nothing to you, dear boy. You are not going to be invited. I may tell you candidly that it is not in Shropshire.
Well, I suspected that, my dear fellow. I Bunburied all over Shropshire on 2 separate occasions. Now go on, tell me, why are you Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
My dear Algy, I don't know whether you'll be able to understand my real motives. You're hardly serious enough. You see, when one is placed in the position of guardian, one has to adopt a very high moral tone on all subjects. It is one's duty to do so. And as a high moral tone can hardly be said to conduce very much to either one's health or one's happiness, I've always pretended to have a younger brother by the name of Ernest, who lives at the Albany and gets into the most dreadful scrapes. And that, my dear boy, is the whole truth, pure and simple.
The truth is rarely pure and never simple. Modern life would be very tedious if it were, and modern literature a complete impossibility.
That wouldn't be at all a bad thing.
Literary criticism is not your forte, my dear fellow. Don't try it. You should leave that to the people who haven't been to a university. They do it so well in the daily papers. What you really are is a Bunburyist. I was quite right in saying you were a Bunburyist. You are one of the most advanced Bunburyists I know.
What on earth do you mean?
You have invented a very useful younger brother called Ernest, so that you may come up to town as often as you like. I have invented an invaluable permanent invalid called Bunbury, so that I may go down into the country whenever I choose. Bunbury is perfectly invaluable. If it weren't for Bunbury's extraordinary bad health, for instance, I wouldn't be able to dine with you at Willis's tonight, for I've really been engaged to Aunt Augusta for more than a week.
But I haven't asked you to dine anywhere with me tonight.
I know. You are absurdly careless in sending out invitations. It is very foolish of you. Nothing annoys people more than not receiving invitations.
You had much better dine with your Aunt Augusta.
I haven't any intention of doing anything of the kind. In the first place, I dined there on Monday, and once a week is quite enough to dine with one's own relations. In the second place, whenever I do dine there, I'm always treated as a member of the family, and either sent down with no woman at all, or two. In the third place, I know whom she will seat me next to tonight. She will seat me next Mary Farquhar, who always flirts with her own husband across the dinner table. That is not very pleasant. Indeed, it is not even decent, and that sort of thing is enormously on the increase. The number of women in London who flirt with their own husbands is perfectly scandalous. It just looks so bad. It is simply washing one's own clean linen cupboard. Besides, now that I know you to be a confirmed Bunburyist, I naturally want to talk to you about Bunbury. I want to tell you the rules.
I am not a Bunburyist at all. If Gwendolyn accepts me, I'm going to kill my brother. Indeed, I think I'll kill him in any case. Necessity's become a little too much attached to him. It's rather a bore. So, I'm going to get rid of Ernest. And I strongly advise you to do the same with with your invalid friend who has the absurd name.
Nothing will induce me to part with Bunbury. And if you ever get married, which seems to me extremely problematic, you'll be very glad indeed to know Bunbury. A man who marries without knowing Bunbury has a very tedious time.
No, that is nonsense. If I marry a charming girl like Gwendolyn, indeed she's the only girl I've ever saw in my life that I would marry, I certainly won't want to know Bunbury.
Then your wife will. You don't seem to realize that in married life, 3 is company and 2 is none.
My dear young friend, that is the theory that the corrupt French drama has been propounding for the last 50 years.
Yes. And that the happy English home has proved in half the time.
For heaven's sake, don't try to be cynical. It's perfectly easy to be cynical.
My dear fellow, it isn't easy to be anything nowadays. There's such a lot of beastly competition about. That must be Aunt Augusta. Only relatives or creditors ever ring in that Wagnerian manner. Now, if I can take her aside for a few minutes so that you can propose to Gwendolyn, may I dine with you tonight at Willis's?
I suppose so, if you want to.
Yes, but you must be serious about it. I hate people who are not serious about meals. It's so shallow.
Lady Bracknell and Miss Fairfax.
Good afternoon, dear Algernon. I hope you are behaving very well.
I'm feeling very well, Aunt Augusta.
That's not quite the same thing. In fact, the two things rarely go together.
My, you are smart.
I am always smart. Am I not, Mr. Worthing?
You are quite perfect, Miss Fairfax.
Oh, I hope I am not that. That will leave no room for developments, and I intend to develop in many directions.
I'm sorry if we are a little late, Algernon, but I was obliged to call on dear Lady Harbury. I hadn't been there since her poor husband's death. I've never saw a woman so altered. She looks quite 20 years younger. And now have a cup of tea and one of those nice cucumber sandwiches you promised me.
Certainly, Aunt Augusta.
Gwendolyn, won't you come sit here?
Thanks, Mama. I'm quite comfortable where I am.
Good heavens. Lady! Why are there no cucumber sandwiches? I ordered them specially for Aunt Augusta.
There were no cucumbers at the market this morning, sir, and I went down twice.
No cucumbers?
No, sir, not even for ready money.
That will do, Lane, thank you. I am greatly distressed, Aunt Augusta, about there being no cucumbers, even for ready money.
Well, that's quite all right, Algernon. I had some crumpets with Lady Harbury, who seems to me to be living entirely for pleasure now.
I hear her hair has turned quite gold from grief.
It certainly has changed its colour, from what cause I, of course, cannot say. Tea? Thank you, Algernon. I've quite a treat for you tonight. I'm going to send you down with Mary Farquhar. She is such a nice woman and so attentive to her husband. It's delightful to watch them.
I'm afraid, Aunt Augusta, actually, that I shall have to give up the pleasure of dining with you tonight after all.
I am not, Algernon. It would put my table completely out. Your uncle would have to dine upstairs. Fortunately, he's accustomed to that.
It is a great bore, and I need hardly say a terrible disappointment, but the fact is that I have just received a telegram to say that my poor friend Bunbury is very ill again. They seem to think I should be with him.
It's strange as Mr. Bunbury seems to suffer from curiously bad health.
Yes, poor Bunbury is a dreadful invalid.
Well, I think it is high time that Mr. Bunbury decided whether he was going to live or to die. This shilly-shallying with the question is absurd. Nor do I in any way approve of the modern sympathy with invalids. I consider it morbid. Illness is not a thing to be encouraged in others. Health is the primary duty of life. I'm always telling that to your poor uncle, but he never seems to take much notice as far as any improvement in his ailment goes. I would be much obliged if you would ask Mr. Bunbury from me not to have a relapse on Saturday, for I require you to arrange my music for me. It is my last reception, and one wants something that will encourage conversation, particularly at the end of the season when everybody said whatever it is they had to say, which in most cases was probably not much.
I'll speak to Bunbury, Aunt Augusta, if he is still conscious, and I think I can promise you he'll be all right by Saturday. Of course, the music is a great difficulty. You see, if one plays good music, people don't listen. And if one plays bad music, people don't talk. But I can run over the program I've drawn out if you'll kindly come into the next room with me for a moment.
Thank you, Algernon. It's very thoughtful of you. I'm sure the program will be delightful after a few expurgations. French songs I cannot possibly allow. People seem to think they are improper and either look shocked, which is vulgar, or laugh, which is worse. But German sounds a thoroughly respectable language, and indeed I believe it so. Gwendolyn, you will accompany me.
Yes, Mama?
Charming day it's been, Miss Fairfax.
Pray, don't talk to me about the weather, Mr. Worthing. Whenever people talk to me about the weather, I always feel quite certain that they mean something entirely different. And that makes me so nervous.
I do mean something else.
I thought so. In fact, I am never wrong.
I would like to be allowed to take advantage of Lady Bracknell's temporary absence.
And I would certainly advise you to do so. Mama has a way of coming back into a room that I've often had to speak to her about.
Miss Fairfax, ever since I met you, I've admired you more than any girl I've ever met. Since I met you.
Yes, I'm quite well aware of the fact. And I often wish that in public, at any rate, you had been more demonstrative. For me, you have always had an irresistible fascination. Even before I met you, I was far from indifferent to you. We live, as I hope you know, Mr. Worthing, in an age of ideals. The fact is constantly mentioned in the more expensive monthly magazines, and has reached the provincial pulpits, I am told. And it has always been my ideal to marry someone of the name of Ernest. There is something in that name that inspires absolute confidence. The moment Algernon first mentioned to me he had a friend called Ernest, I knew that I was destined to love you.
You really love me, Gwendolyn?
Passionately.
You darling, you don't know how happy you've made me.
My own Ernest.
But you don't mean to say that you couldn't love me if my name was something else, or wasn't Ernest at all.
But your name is Ernest.
Yes, I know it is, but supposing it was something else, do you mean to say you couldn't love me then?
Ah, but that is clearly a metaphysical speculation, and like most metaphysical speculations, has very little reference at all to the actual facts of real life as we know them.
Frankly, darling, to speak quite candidly, I don't much care for the name of Ernest. I don't think the name suits me at all.
It suits you perfectly. It's a divine name. It has a music of its own. It produces vibrations.
Really, Gwendolyn? I think there are lots of other much nicer names. I think Jack, for instance, is a charming name.
Jack? No. There is very little music in the name Jack, if any at all. It does not thrill. It produces absolutely no vibrations. I have known several Jacks, and they all, without a doubt, have been more than usually plain. Besides, Jack is a notorious domesticity for John. And I pity any woman who is married to a man called John.
I'm John.
She would probably never be allowed to know the entrancing pleasures of a single moment's solitude. The only really safe name is Ernest.
Gwendolyn and I must be christened at once. I mean, we must be married at once. There is no time to be lost.
Married, Mr. Worthing?
Surely. You know I love you, and you led me to believe, Miss Fairfax, that you are not absolutely indifferent to me.
I adore you, Mr. Worthing. But you haven't proposed to me yet. Nothing has been said at all about marriage. The subject has not even been touched upon.
May I propose to you now?
I think it would be an admirable opportunity. And to spare you any possible disappointment, Mr. Worthing, I think it's only fair to tell you quite frankly beforehand that I'm fully determined to accept you.
Gwendolyn.
Yes, Mr. Worthing. What have you got to say to me?
You know what I've got to say to you.
Yes, but you don't say it.
Gwendolyn. Will you marry me?
Of course, darling. How long you've been about it. I'm afraid you have very little experience in how to propose.
My own one. I've never loved anyone in the world but you.
Yes, but men often propose for practice. I know my brother Gerald does. All my girlfriends tell me so. My, what wonderfully blue eyes you have, Ernest. They're quite blue. I hope you will always look at me just like that, especially when there are other people present.
Mr. Worthing! Rise, sir, from the semi-recumbent posture. It is most indecorous.
Mama, I must beg you to retire. This is no place for you. Besides, Mr. Worthing has not quite finished yet.
Finished what, may I ask?
I'm engaged to Mr. Worthing, Mama.
Pardon me. You are not engaged to anyone. When you do become engaged, I, or your father, will inform you of the fact. An engagement should come on a young girl as a surprise. Pleasant or unpleasant. It is hardly a matter that she could be allowed to arrange for herself. And now I have a few questions to put to you, Mr. Worthing. While I'm making these inquiries, you, Gwendolyn, will wait for me in the carriage.
Mama!
In the carriage, Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn, the carriage.
Yes, Mama.
You can take a seat, Mr. Worthing.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell. I prefer standing.
I feel bound to tell you are not down on my list of eligible young men, although I do have the same list as the dear Duchess of Bolton has. We work together, in fact. However, I'm fully ready to enter your name should your answers be what a really affectionate mother requires. Do you smoke?
Yes, I must admit, I smoke.
Pleased to hear it. A man should always have an occupation of some kind. There are far too many idle men in London as it is. How old are you?
29.
A very good age to be married at. I'm of the opinion, Mr. Worthing, that a man who desires to get married should either know everything or nothing. Which do you know?
I knew nothing, Lady Bracknell.
Glad to hear it. I do not approve of anything that tackles natural ignorance. Ignorance is like a delicate exotic fruit. Touch it, and the bloom is gone. The whole theory of modern education is radically unsound. Fortunately, in England, at any rate, education produces no effect whatsoever. If it did, it would prove to be a serious danger to the upper classes and probably lead to acts of violence in Grosvenor Square. What is your income?
Between 7,000 and 8,000 a year.
In land or in investments?
Investments, chiefly.
That is satisfactory. What of the duties expected of one during one's lifetime and the duties exacted from one after one's death? Land ceases to be neither a profit nor a pleasure. It gives one position, but prevents one from keeping it up. That's all that can be said about land.
I own a house in the country, with some land, of course, attached to it. About 1,500 acres, I believe. But I don't depend on that for my real income. In fact, as far as I can make out, the poachers are the only ones who make anything out of it.
A country house, how many bedrooms? Oh, well, that point can be cleared up afterwards. You have a townhouse, I hope. A girl with a simple, unspoiled nature like Gwendolyn cannot be expected to reside in the country.
Well, I own a house in Belgrave Square, but it is let by the year to Lady Bloxham. Of course, I can get it back whenever I like, at 6 months' notice.
Lady Bloxham, I don't know her.
Oh, she goes about very little. She is a lady considerably advanced in years.
Ah, nowadays that is no guarantee of respectability of character. What number in Belgrave Square?
149.
The unfashionable side. I thought there was something. Oh well, it can easily be altered.
Do you mean the fashion or the size?
Oh, both if necessary, I presume. What are your politics?
I'm afraid I really have none. I'm a liberal unionist.
Oh, they count as Tories. They dine with us, or come in the evening at any rate. Now, to minor matters, are your parents living?
I have lost both my parents.
To lose one parent, Mr. Worthing, may be regarded as a misfortune. To lose both looks like carelessness. Who was your father? He was evidently a man of some wealth. Was he born in what the radical papers call the purple of commerce, or did he rise out of the ranks of the aristocracy?
I'm afraid, Lady Bracknell, I don't really know. You see, I said that I'd lost my parents, but it would be nearer to the truth to say that they seem to have lost me. I don't really know who I am by birth. I was found.
Found?
The old Mr. Thomas Cardew, the late old Mr. Thomas Cardew, a gentleman of a very kindly and charitable disposition, found me and gave me the name Worthing because he happened to have a first-class ticket for Worthing in his pocket at the time. Worthing is a place in Sussex. It is a seaside resort.
And where did this charitable gentleman with a first-class ticket to the seaside resort find you?
In a handbag.
A handbag?
Yes, Lady Bracknell. I was in a handbag. A somewhat large, black, leather handbag with handles to it. An ordinary handbag, in fact.
And where did this Mr. Thomas James Cardew come across this ordinary handbag?
It was in the cloakroom of a Victoria station. It was given to him in mistake for his own.
The cloakroom at Victoria Station?
Yes, Lady Bracknell. The Brighton line.
The line is immaterial, Mr. Worthing. I confess I feel somewhat bewildered by what you've just told me. To be born, or at any rate, bred, in a handbag, whether it had handles or not, seems to me to display contempt for the ordinary decencies of family life that reminds one of the worst excesses of the French Revolution. And I presume you know what that unfortunate movement led to? As for the particular locality in which the handbag was found, a cloakroom at a railway station, might serve to conceal a social indiscretion. Has probably indeed been used for that purpose before now, but cannot be regarded as an assured basis for a recognized position in good society.
May I ask you what you would advise me to do? I need hardly say I would do anything in the world to ensure Gwendolyn's happiness.
I would strongly advise you, Mr. Worthing, to try and acquire some relations as soon as possible, and to make a definite effort, at any rate, to produce one parent of either sex before the season is quite over.
I don't think I could possibly manage to do that. I can produce the handbag at any moment. It's in my dressing room at home. I really think that should satisfy you, Lady Bracknell.
Me, sir? What has it to do with me? You can hardly expect that Lord Bracknell and I would allow our only daughter, a girl brought up with the utmost care, to marry into a cloakroom and form an alliance with a parcel? Good morning, Mr. Worthing!
Good morning! For heaven's sake, don't play that ghastly tune, Algie! How idiotic you are!
Didn't it go off all right, old boy? You don't mean to say Gwendolyn refused you? I know it is a way she has. She's always refusing people. I think it's most ill-natured of her.
Gwendolyn is right as a trivet. As far as she is concerned, we are engaged. Her mother is perfectly unbearable. Never met such a gorgon. I don't really know what a gorgon is like, but I am quite sure that Lady Bracknell is one. In any case, she's a monster, without being a myth, which is rather unfair. I beg your pardon, Algie. I suppose I shouldn't talk about your own art in this way before you.
My dear boy, I love hearing my relations abused. The only thing that makes me put up with them at all. Relations are simply a tedious pack of people who haven't got the remotest knowledge of how to live, nor the smallest instinct about when to die.
No, that is nonsense.
It isn't.
But in any case, I want to argue about the matter. You always want to argue about things.
Well, that is exactly what things were originally made for.
On my word, I thought that way I'd shoot myself. You don't think there's any chance of Gwendolyn becoming like her mother in, say, 150 years, do you, Algie?
All women become like their mothers. That is their tragedy. No man does, that's his.
Is that clever?
It is perfectly phrased, and quite as true as any observation in civilized life should be.
I am sick to death of cleverness. Everybody is clever nowadays. You can't go anywhere without meeting clever people. The thing has become an absolute public nuisance. I wish to goodness we had a few fools left.
We have.
Well, I should extremely like to meet them. What do they talk about?
The fools? Oh. About the clever people, I should think.
What fools?
By the way, did you tell Gwendolyn the truth about your being Ernest in town, Jack of the country?
My dear fellow, the truth isn't the sort of thing one tells to a nice, sweet, innocent girl like that. What extraordinary ideas you have about the ways to behave to a woman.
The only way to behave to a woman is to make love to her, if she is pretty. And to her sister, if she is plain.
That is nonsense.
What about your brother? What about the profligate Ernest?
Oh, by the end of the week I shall have got rid of him. I'll say he died in Paris of apoplexy. Lots of people die quite suddenly of apoplexy, don't they?
Yes, but it's hereditary, my dear fellow. It's the sort of thing that runs in families. You had much better say a severe chill.
You're sure a severe chill isn't hereditary or anything of that kind?
Of course it isn't.
Wonderful. My poor brother Ernest to be carried off suddenly in Paris by a severe chill. That gets rid of him.
Didn't you say Miss Cardew was a little bit too interested in your brother Ernest? Won't she feel his loss a great deal?
No, that is all right. Cecily is not a silly romantic girl, I'm pleased to say. She's got a capital appetite, goes on long walks, and pays absolutely no attention at all to her lessons.
I would rather like to meet Cecily.
I'll take very good care that you never do. She is excessively pretty and only just 18.
And does Gwendolyn know that you have an excessively pretty ward who is only just 18?
Oh, one doesn't just blurt these things out to people. Gwendolen and Cecily are perfectly certain to be extremely great friends. I'll bet you anything you like that a half hour after they've met, they'll be calling each other sister.
Women only do that after they've called each other a lot of other things first. Now, my dear boy, if we want to get a good table at Willis's, we really must get dressed. Do you know it's nearly 7?
No, it's always nearly 7.
Well, I'm hungry.
I never knew you when you weren't.
Well, what shall we do after dinner? Go to a theatre?
Oh, no, I loathe listening.
Well, we might go to a club.
No, I hate talking.
Well, we might trot round to the Empire at 10.
No, I can't bear looking at things. It's so silly.
Well, what shall we do then?
Nothing.
It's awfully hard work doing nothing. However, I don't mind hard work when there is no definite object of any kind.
Miss Fairfax.
Gwendolyn, upon my word.
Algie, kindly turn your back. I have something very particular to say to Mr. Worthing.
Really, Gwendolyn, I don't know if I can allow this.
Algie, you always adopt a strictly immoral attitude towards life. You're not quite old enough to do that.
My own one.
Ernest, we may never be married. From the look on Mama's face, I fear we never shall. Few parents nowadays pay any regard to what their children say to them. The old-fashioned respect for the young is fast dying out. Whatever influence I had over Mama, I lost at the age of 3. But although she may prevent us from becoming man and wife, and I may marry someone else, and marry often, nothing she can possibly do can alter my eternal devotion to you.
Dear Gwendolen.
The story of your romantic origin, as related to me by Mama with unpleasing comments, has naturally stirred the inner fibers of my nature. Your Christian name has an irresistible fascination. The simplicity of your character makes you exquisitely incomprehensible to me. Your address in the town I have. What is your address in the country?
The Manor House, Woolton, Hertfordshire.
There is a good postal service, I suppose. It may be necessary to do something desperate. That, of course, will require serious consideration. I will communicate with you daily.
My own darling.
How long do you remain in town?
Till Monday.
Good. Algie, you may turn round now.
Thanks, I've turned round already.
You may also ring the bell.
You will let me see your carriage, my own darling.
Certainly.
I will see Miss Fairfax out.
Bring me a glass of sherry, Lane.
Yes, sir.
Tomorrow, Lane, I'm going bunburying.
Yes, sir.
I probably shall not be back till Monday. Bring my dress clothes, my smoking jacket, and all the Bunbury suits.
Yes, sir.
I hope tomorrow is a fine day, Lane.
It never is, sir.
Lane, you're a perfect pessimist.
I do my best to provide satisfaction.
There's a sensible, intellectual girl. The only girl I've ever cared for in all my life. What on earth are you so amused at?
I'm just a little anxious about poor Bunbury, that's all.
If you don't take care, your friend Bunbury will get you into a serious scrape someday.
Oh, well, I love scrapes. They're the only things that are never serious.
That's nonsense, Algie. You never talk anything but nonsense.
Nobody ever does.
Pleasures await you. Your German grammar is on the table. Pray to open to page 15. We will repeat yesterday's lesson.
But I don't like German. It isn't at all a becoming language. I know perfectly well that I look quite plain after my German lesson.
Child, you know how anxious your guardian is that you should improve yourself in every way. He laid particular stress on your German when he was leaving for town yesterday. Indeed, he always lays stress on your German when he's leaving for town.
Dear Uncle Jack is so very serious. Sometimes he is so serious I think he cannot be quite well.
Child, your guardian enjoys the best of health, and his gravity of demeanor is especially to be commended in one so comparatively young as he is. I know no one with a higher sense of duty and responsibility.
I suppose that is why he often looks a little bored when we three are together.
Cecily, I'm surprised at you. Mr. Worthing has many troubles in his life. Idle merriment and triviality would be out of place in his conversation. And you must remember his constant anxiety about that unfortunate young man, his brother.
I wish Uncle Jack would allow that unfortunate young man, his brother, to come down here sometimes. I think we might have a good influence over him, Miss Prism. I am sure you certainly would. You know German and geology and things of that kind influence a man very much.
I do not think that even I could produce any effect on a character that, according to his own brother's admission, is irretrievably weak and vacillating. Indeed, I am not sure that I would desire to reclaim him. I'm not in favor of this modern mania of turning bad people into good people at a moment's notice. As a man sows, so let him reap. Put away your diary, Cecily. I don't see why you should keep a diary at all.
I keep a diary in order to enter the wonderful secrets of my life. If I didn't write them down, I should probably forget all about them.
Memory, my dear Cecily, is the diary we all carry about with us.
Yes, but it usually chronicles the things that have never happened and couldn't possibly have happened. I believe that memory is responsible for all these 3-volume novels.
Do not speak slightingly of the 3-volume novels, Cecily. I wrote one myself in earlier days.
Did you really, Miss Prism? How wonderfully clever you are. I do hope it did not end happily. I don't like novels that end happily. They depress me so much.
The good ended happily and the bad unhappily. That is what fiction means.
I suppose so. But it seems very unfair. And was your novel ever published?
Alas, no. The manuscript was unfortunately abandoned. I use the words in the sense of lost or mislaid. To your work, child, these speculations are profitless.
But I see dear Dr. Chasuble coming up through the garden.
Dr. Chasuble, this is indeed a pleasure.
And how are we this morning? Miss Prism, you are, I trust, well?
Miss Prism has just been complaining of a slight headache. I think it would do her so much good to go for a short stroll with you in the park, Dr. Chasuble.
Cecily, I have not mentioned anything about a headache.
No, dear Miss Prism. I know that. But I felt instinctively that you had a headache. Indeed, I was thinking about that. And not my German lesson when the rector came in.
I hope, Cecily, you are not inattentive.
Oh, I'm afraid I am.
That is strange. Were I fortunate enough to be Miss Prism's pupil, I would hang upon her lip. I spoke metaphorically. My metaphor was drawn from bees. Mr. Worthing, I suppose, has not returned from town yet.
We do not expect him till Monday afternoon.
Yes, he usually likes spending his Sundays in London. He is not one of those whose chief aim is enjoyment, as by all accounts that unfortunate young man his brother seems to be. But I must not disturb Egeria and her pupil any longer.
Egeria? My name is Letitia, Doctor.
A classical allusion, merely. Drawn from the pagan authors. I shall see you both, no doubt, at evensong.
I think, dear Doctor, I will have that stroll with you. I find I have a headache and a walk might do it good.
With pleasure, Miss Prism, with pleasure. We might go so far as the schools and that.
That would be delightful. Cecily, you would study your political economy in my absence. The chapter on the fall of the rupee you may omit. That is, after all, somewhat too sensational.
Horrid political economy. Horrid geography. Horrid German.
Mr. Ernest Worthing has just arrived from the station. He has brought with him his luggage.
Mr. Ernest Worthing, B4, the Albany. Uncle Jack's brother. Did you tell him Mr. Worthing was in town?
Yes, miss. He seemed very much disappointed. I mentioned that you and Miss Prism were in the garden. He said he was anxious to speak to you privately for a moment.
Ask Mr. Ernest Worthing to come out here. I suppose you'd better talk to the housekeeper about a room for him.
Yes, miss.
I have never met a really wicked person before. I feel rather frightened. I'm so afraid you look just like everyone else.
You are my little cousin Cecily, I'm sure.
You are under some strange mistake. I am not little. In fact, I believe I'm more than usually tall for my age. But I am your cousin Cecily. You, I see from your card, are Uncle Jack's brother. My cousin Ernest. My wicked
cousin, Ernest.
Oh, no, I'm not really wicked at all, Cousin Cecily. You mustn't think that I'm wicked.
If you are not, then you have certainly been deceiving us all in a very inexcusable manner. I hope you've not been leading a double life, pretending to be wicked and being really good all the time. That would be hypocrisy.
Of course, I have been rather reckless.
I'm glad to hear it.
In fact, now you mention the subject, I have been very bad in my own small way.
I don't know if you should be so proud of that, though I'm sure it must have been very pleasant.
Well, it is much pleasanter being here with you, Cousin Cecily.
I don't understand how you can be here at all. Uncle Jack won't be back till Monday afternoon.
Oh, that is a great disappointment. I have a business appointment in London that I am anxious to miss.
Couldn't you receive any of it in London?
No, the appointment is in London.
Well, I know, of course, how important it is not to keep a business engagement if one wants to retain any sense of the beauty of life. But still, I think you had better wait till Uncle Jack arrives. I know he wants to speak to you about your emigrating.
About my what?
Your emigrating. He has gone up to buy your outfit.
Well, I certainly wouldn't let Jack buy my outfit. He has no taste in neckties at all.
I don't think you will require neckties. Uncle Jack is sending you to Australia.
Australia? I'd sooner die.
Well, he said at dinner on Wednesday night that you would have to choose between this world, the next world, and Australia.
Well, the accounts I have heard of Australia and the next world are not particularly encouraging. This world is good enough for me, Cousin Cecily.
Yes, but are you good enough for it?
I'm afraid I'm not that. That is why I want you to reform me. You might make that your mission, if you don't mind, Cousin Cecily.
I'm afraid I've no time this afternoon.
Well, would you mind my reforming myself this afternoon?
It is rather quixotic of you, but I think you should try.
I will. I feel better already.
You are looking a little worse.
That is because I am hungry.
Oh, how thoughtless of me. I should have remembered that when one is going to lead an entirely new life, one requires regular and wholesome meals. Won't you come in?
Thank you. Might I have a buttonhole first? I never have any real appetite unless I have a buttonhole first.
An orchid?
No. I'd sooner have a pink rose.
Why?
Because you are like a pink rose.
I don't think it could be right to be talked to me like that. Miss Prism never says such things to me.
Well then, Miss Prism is a short-sighted old lady. You're the prettiest girl I ever saw.
Miss Prism says that all good looks are a snare.
Well, they're a snare that every sensible man would like to be caught in.
Oh, I don't think I should care to catch a sensible man. I should know what to talk to him about.
You are too much alone, dear Dr. Chasuble. You should get married. A misanthrope, I can understand. A woman-throp, never.
Believe me, I do not deserve so neologistic a phrase. The precept as well as the practice of the primitive church was distinctly against matrimony.
That is obviously the reason why the primitive church has not lasted up to the present day, dear Doctor. And you do not seem to realize that by persistently remaining single, men convert themselves into permanent public temptations. Men should be more careful. This very celibacy leads weaker vessels astray.
But is a man not equally attractive when married?
No married man is ever attractive, except to his wife.
And often I've been told, not even to her.
That depends on the intellectual sympathies of the woman. Maturity can always be depended on, ripeness can always be trusted. Young women are green. I spoke horticulturally, of course. My metaphor was drawn from fruits. But where is Cecily?
Perhaps she followed us to the schools.
Mr. Worthing?
Mr. Worthing?
This is indeed a surprise. We did not expect you until Monday afternoon.
I returned sooner than expected. Dr. Chasuble, I hope you're well.
My dear Mr. Worthing, I trust this garb of woe does not betoken some terrible calamity.
My brother.
More shameful deaths and extravagances.
Still leading his life of pleasure.
Dead.
Your brother Ernest dead?
Quite dead.
What a lesson for him. I trust he will profit by it.
My dear Mr. Worthing, I offer you my sincere condolence. You have at least the consolation of knowing that you were always the most generous and forgiving of brothers.
Poor Ernest. He had many faults, but this is indeed a sad, sad blow.
Very sad indeed. Were you with him in the end?
No, he died abroad. In Paris, in fact. I had a telegram sent from the manager of the Grand Hotel.
Was the cause of death mentioned?
A severe chill, it seems.
As a man sows, so let him reap.
Charity, Miss Prism, charity. None of us is perfect. I myself am peculiarly susceptible to draught. Will the interment take place here?
No, he seems to have expressed a desire to be buried in Paris.
In Paris? I fear that does not point to any very serious state of mind in the last. You would wish, no doubt, for me to make a slight allusion to this tragic domestic affliction next Sunday. My sermon on the meaning of Mama in the Wilderness can be adapted for almost any occasion, joyful, or as in the present case, distressing. I have preached it at harvest celebrations, at christenings, confirmation, days of humiliation, and festal days. The last time I delivered it was in the cathedral as a charity sermon on behalf of the Society for the Prevention of Dissension among the upper orders. The bishop who was present was very much struck by some of the analogies I drew.
That reminds me, I think you mentioned christenings, Doctor. I suppose you know how to christen already. That is, I mean to say, you are continually christening, aren't you?
It is, I regret to say, one of the rector's most constant duties in his parish. I have often spoken to the poorer classes on the subject, but they don't seem to know what thrift is.
But is there any particular infant in whom you are interested, Mr. Worthing? Your brother, I believe, was unmarried, was he not?
Oh, yes.
People who live entirely for pleasure usually are.
But it is not for any child here, Doctor. You know, I'm fond of children. The thing is, I would like to be christened myself. This afternoon, if you've got nothing better to do.
But surely, Mr. Worthing, you have been christened already.
I don't remember anything about it.
But have you any grave doubts on the subject?
Well, I certainly intend to have. Of course, I don't know if the whole thing would bother you in any way. Or if you think I'm a little too old now.
Not at all. The sprinkling and indeed immersion of adults is a perfectly canonical practice.
Immersion?
You need have no apprehensions. Sprinkling is all that is necessary. Or indeed, I think advisable. Our weather is so changeable. At what hour would you wish the ceremony performed?
Oh, I might trot round about 5 if that would suit you.
Perfectly, perfectly. In fact, I have 2 similar ceremonies to perform at that time. A case of twins that occurred in one of the outlying cottages of your own estate. Poor Jenkins the carter. Most hard-working man.
I don't think it would be much fun being christened alongside other babies. It would be childish. Would 5:30 do?
Admirably, admirably. And now, dear Mr. Worthing, I will no longer intrude on a house of sorrow. I would merely beg you not to be too much bowed down by grief. What seem to us bitter trials are often blessings in disguise.
This seems to me a blessing of an extremely obvious kind.
Uncle Jack! I'm so pleased to see you back. But what horrid clothes you have on. Do go and change them.
Cecily!
My child, my child.
What is the matter, Uncle Jack? Do look happy. You look as if you have toothache and I've got such a surprise for you. Who do you think is in the dining room? Your brother.
Who?
Your brother Ernest. He arrived about half an hour ago.
That's nonsense. I haven't got a brother.
Oh, don't say that. However badly he may have behaved to you in the past, he is still your brother. You couldn't be so heartless as to disown him. I'll tell him to come out. And you will shake hands with him, won't you, Uncle Jack?
These seem to me to be very joyful tidings.
Just as we have been resigned to his loss, his sudden return seems to me peculiarly distressing.
My brother in the dining room? I don't know what it all means. I think it's perfectly absurd. Good heavens!
My dear brother John, I have come down from town to tell you that I am very sorry for all the trouble I have given you, and that I intend to lead a better life in the future.
Uncle Jack, you are not going to refuse your own brother's hand.
Nothing will induce me to take his hand. I think it's coming down here disgraceful. He knows perfectly well why.
Uncle Jack, do be nice. There's some good in everyone. Ernest has just been telling me about his poor invalid friend, Mr. Bunbury. So often. And surely there must be good in one who is kind to an invalid and leaves the pleasures of London to sit by a bed of pain.
He's been talking to you about Bunbury, has he?
Yes, he has told me all about Mr. Bunbury and his terrible state of health.
Bunbury? Well, I won't have him talk to you about Bunbury or about anything else. It's enough to drive one perfectly frantic.
Of course, I admit the faults were all mine, but I must say I do find Brother John's coldness to me to be peculiarly painful. I had expected a more enthusiastic welcome, especially considering it is the first time that I have ever come here.
Uncle Jack, if you don't shake hands with Ernest, I will never forgive you.
Never forgive him.
Never, never, never.
Fine. But it's the last time I shall ever do it.
It's pleasant, is it not, to see some perfect reconciliation? I think we might leave the two brothers together.
That would be delightful. Cecily, you will come with us? Certainly, Miss Prism. My little task of reconciliation is over.
You have done a beautiful action today, my child.
We must not be premature in our judgments. I feel very happy.
You young scoundrel, Algie! You have got to get out of this place as soon as possible. I don't allow any Bunbury in here.
I have put Mr. Ernest Worthing's things in the room next to yours, sir. I suppose that is all right.
What?
Mr. Ernest's luggage, sir. I have unpacked it and put it in the room next to your own.
His luggage?
Yes, sir. 2 portmanteaus, a dressing case, 2 hat boxes, and a large luncheon basket.
I am afraid that I can't stay for more than a week.
Merriman, order the dog cart at once. Mr. Ernest has been suddenly called back to town.
Yes. What a fearful lie you are, Jack. I have not been called back to town at all.
Yes, you have.
Well, I haven't heard anybody call me back.
Your duty as a gentleman calls you back.
My duty as a gentleman has never gotten in the way of my pleasures in the smallest degree.
Yes, I can quite understand that.
Well, Cecily is a darling.
You are not to talk about Miss Cardew that way. I don't like it.
Well, I don't like your clothes. They're perfectly ridiculous. Why don't you go on up and change? It is perfectly childish to be in deep mourning for a man who was actually staying for a whole week in your house as a guest. I call it grotesque.
You are not staying with me as a guest for a whole week or as anything else. You have got to leave by the 4:05 train.
Well, I certainly won't leave you so long as you're in mourning. It would be most unfriendly. If I were in mourning, you would stay with me, I suppose. I should think it most unkind if you didn't.
Will you go if I change my clothes?
Yes, so long as you do not take too long. I never saw anybody take so long to dress, and with such little result.
Well, in any case, it's better than always being overdressed as you are.
If I am occasionally a little overdressed, I make up for it by being always immensely overeducated.
Your vanity is ridiculous. Your presence in my garden an outrage, and your conduct utterly absurd. However, you have got to leave by the 4:05 train. I hope you will have a pleasant journey back to town. This Bunburying, as you call it, has not been a great success for you.
Well, I think it has been a great success. I am in love with Cecily, and that is everything. But I must see her again before I go and make arrangements for another Bunbury. Ah, there she is now.
I thought you were with Uncle Jack.
He's gone to fetch the dog cart for me.
Is he going to take you for a nice drive?
He's going to send me away.
And we've got to part?
I am afraid so. It is a very painful parting.
It is always painful to part from people whom one has known for a very brief space of time. The absence of old friends one can endure with equanimity, but even a momentary separation from anyone to whom one has just been introduced is almost unbearable.
Thank you. The dog cart is at the door, sir.
It can wait, Merriman, for 5 minutes.
Yes, miss. I hope, Cecily, I shall not offend you if I state quite frankly and openly that you seem to me to be in every way the visible personification of absolute perfection.
I think your frankness does you great credit, Ernest. If you will allow me, I will copy your remarks into my diary.
Do you really keep a diary? I'd give anything to look at it. May I?
Oh no. You see, a diary is simply a very young girl's record of her own thoughts and impressions and consequently meant for publication. When it appears in volume form, I hope you will own a copy. But pray, Ernest, don't stop. I delight in taking down from dictation. I have reached absolute perfection. You can go on. I am quite ready for more. Don't cough, Ernest. When one is dictating, one should speak fluently and not cough. Besides, I don't know how to spell a cough.
Cecily, ever since I first looked upon your wonderful and incomparable beauty, I have dared to love you wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly.
I don't think it can be right for you to tell me that you love me wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly. Hopelessly doesn't seem to make much sense, does it?
Cecily, the dog cart is waiting, sir. Have it come round next week, at the same hour.
Yes, sir.
Uncle Jack would be very much annoyed if he knew you were staying on until next week, at the same hour.
I don't care what Jack thinks. I don't care for anybody in the whole world but you, Cecily. I love you. You will marry me, won't you?
You silly boy! Of course! Why, we've been engaged the last 3 months!
For the last 3 months?
It will be exactly 3 months on Thursday.
But how did we become engaged?
Well, ever since Uncle Jack confessed to us that he had a younger brother who was very wicked and bad, you of course have formed the chief topic of conversation between myself and Miss Prism. And of course any man who is much talked about is always very attractive. One feels there must be something in him after all. I dare say it was foolish of me, but I fell in love with you, Ernest.
Darling. But when was our engagement actually settled?
On the 14th of February last. Worn out by your entire ignorance of my existence, I determined to end the matter, one way or another. And after a long struggle with myself, I accepted you, under this dear old tree here. The next day I bought this little ring in your name. And this is the little bangle with the true lover's knot I promised you always to wear.
Did I give you this? Very pretty, isn't it?
Yes, you've wonderfully good taste, Ernest. It's the excuse I've always given you for leading such a bad life. And this is the box in which I kept all your dear letters.
My letters? But my own sweet Cecily, I've never written you any letters.
You need hardly remind me of that, Ernest. I remember only too well that I was forced to write your letters for you. I wrote always 3 times a week, sometimes oftener.
Do let me read them.
Oh, I couldn't possibly. They would make you far too conceited. The 3 you wrote to me after I had broken off the engagement are so beautiful, so badly spelled, that even now I can hardly read them without crying a little.
But was our engagement actually ever broken off?
Of course it was. On the 22nd of last March. You can see the entry if you like. Today I broke off my engagement with Ernest. I feel it is better to do so. The weather still continues charming.
But why on earth did you break it off? What had I done? I'd done nothing at all. Cecily, I am very much hurt indeed to hear that you broke it off. Particularly when the weather was so charming.
Well, it hardly been a really serious engagement if it hadn't been broken off at least once. But I forgave you before the week was out.
What a perfect angel you are.
You dear romantic boy. I do hope your hair pulls naturally.
It does. With a little help from others.
I'm so glad.
You'll never break off our engagement again?
I don't think I could break it off now that I've actually met you. Besides, of course, there's the question of your name.
Yes. Of course.
You must not laugh at me, darling, but it's always been a girlish dream of mine to love someone whose name was Ernest. There is something in that name that seems to inspire absolute confidence. I pity any poor married woman whose husband is not called Ernest.
But, my dear child, do you mean to say you could not love me if I had some other name?
But what name?
Oh, any name you like. Algernon, for instance.
But I don't like the name of Algernon.
But my own dear, sweet, loving little darling, I really don't see why you should object to the name of Algernon. It is not at all a bad name. In fact, it is rather an aristocratic name. Why, half the chaps who get into the bankruptcy court are named Algernon. But seriously, Cecily, if I was named Algie, couldn't you love me?
I might respect you, Ernest. I might even admire your character. But I fear I should not be able to give you my undivided attention.
Cecily, your rector here, as I suppose, thoroughly experienced in the practice of all the rites and ceremonials of the church?
Oh, yes. Dr. Chasuble is the most learned man. He has never written a single book, so you can imagine how much he knows.
I must see him at once on a most important christening. I mean, on a most important business. I shan't be away more than half an hour.
Considering we have been engaged since February the 14th, and I only met you today for the first time, I think it is rather hard that you should leave me for so long a period as a half an hour. Couldn't you make it 20 minutes?
I'll be back in no time.
What an impetuous boy he is! I like his hair so much. I must enter his proposal in my diary.
Miss Fairfax has just called to see Mr. Worthing on very important business, Miss Fairfax states.
Isn't Mr. Worthing in his library?
Mr. Worthing went in the direction of the rectory some time ago.
Pray, ask the lady to come out here. Mr. Worthing is sure to be back soon. And you can bring tea.
Yes, miss.
Miss Fairfax, I suppose one of the many good elderly women who are associated with Uncle Jack and some of his philanthropic work in London. I don't quite like women who are interested in philanthropic work. I think he's so forward of them.
Miss Fairfax.
Pray, let me introduce myself to you. My name is Cecily Cardew.
Cecily Cardew? What a very sweet name. Something tells me we are going to be great friends. I like you already more than I can say. My first impressions of people are never wrong.
How nice of you to like me so much after such a comparatively short time. Pray sit down.
I may call you Cecily, may I not?
With pleasure.
And you will always call me Gwendolyn, won't you?
If you wish.
Then that's just all quite settled then, is it not?
I hope so.
Perhaps this might be an admirable opportunity for my mentioning who I am. My father is Lord Bracknell. You have never heard of Papa, I suppose?
I don't think so.
Outside the family circle, I am glad to say, Papa is entirely unknown. I I think that is quite as it should be. The home seems to me to be the proper sphere for the man. And once a man begins to neglect his domestic duties, he becomes painfully effeminate. Does he not? And I don't like that. It makes men so very attractive. Cecily, Mama, whose views on education are remarkably strict, has raised me to be extremely short-sighted. It is part of her system. So do you mind my looking at you through my glasses?
Oh, not at all, Gwendolyn. I'm very fond of being looked at.
You are here on a short visit, I suppose?
Oh no, I live here.
Really? Your mother, no doubt, or some other female relative of advanced years resides here also?
Oh no, I have no mother. Nor, in fact, any relations.
Indeed.
My dear guardian, with the assistance of Miss Prism, has the arduous task of looking after me.
Your guardian?
Yes, I am Mr. Worthing's ward.
Oh. It is strange she never mentioned to me he had a ward. How secretive of him. He grows more interesting hourly. I am not sure, however, this news inspires me with feelings of unmixed delight. I am very fond of you, Cecily. I have liked you ever since I met you. But I am bound to state that now that I know that you are Mr. Worthing's ward, I cannot help but expressing a wish that you were, well, just a little older than you seem to be, and not quite so very alluring in appearance. In fact, if I may speak candidly...
Pray do. I think that whenever one has anything unpleasant to say, one should always be quite candid.
Well, to speak with perfect candor, Cecily, I wish that you were fully 42 and more than usually plain for your age. Ernest has a strong, upright nature. He is the very soul of truth and honor. Disloyalty would be as impossible to him as deception. But even men of the noblest possible moral character are extremely susceptible to the influence of the physical charms of others. Modern, no less than ancient history, supplies us with many a most painful example of what I refer to. If it were not so, history, indeed, would be quite unreadable.
I beg your pardon, Gwendolyn, but did you say Ernest?
Yes.
Oh, but it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is my guardian. It is his brother, his elder brother.
Oh. Ernest never mentioned to me he had a brother.
I'm sorry to say they have not been on good terms for some time.
Ah, that accounts for it. And now that I think of it, I've never heard any man mention his brother. The subject seems distasteful to most men. Cecily, you have lifted a load from my mind. I was growing almost anxious. It would have been terrible if any cloud had come across a friendship like ours, would it not? Of course, you are quite sure that it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is your guardian?
Quite sure. In fact, I'm going to be his.
I beg your pardon.
Dearest Gwendolyn, there is no reason for me to make a secret of it to you. Our little county newspaper is sure to chronicle the fact next week. Mr. Ernest Worthing and I are engaged to be married.
My darling Cecily, I'm afraid there must be some slight error. Mr. Ernest Worthing is engaged to me. The announcement will appear in the Saturday Post at the latest.
I am afraid you are under some misconception. Ernest proposed to me exactly 10 minutes ago.
It is certainly very curious, for Ernest proposed to me yesterday afternoon at exactly 5:30. If you would care to verify the incident, pray do so. I never travel without my diary. One should always have something sensational to read on the train. I'm so sorry, dear Cecily, if it is any disappointment, but I'm afraid I have the prior claim.
It would distress me more than I can tell you, dear Gwendolyn, if it caused you any mental or physical anguish. But I feel bound to point out that since Ernest proposed to you, he clearly has changed his mind.
If the poor boy has been entrapped into any foolish promise, I shall make it my duty to rescue him at once, and with a firm hand.
Whatever unfortunate entanglement my poor boy may have gotten into, I will never reproach him with it. After we are married.
Do you allude to me, Miss Cardew, as an entanglement? You are presumptuous! On an occasion of this kind, it becomes more than a moral duty to speak one's mind. It becomes a pleasure.
Do you suggest, Miss Fairfax, that I entrapped Ernest into an engagement? How dare you! This is no time to wear the shallow mask of manners. When I see a spade, I call it a spade.
I am glad to say that I have never seen a spade. It is obvious our social spheres have been widely different.
Shall I lay tea here as usual, miss?
Yes, as usual.
Are there many interesting walks in the vicinity, Miss Cardew?
Oh, yes, a great many. From the top of one of the hills quite close, one can see 5 counties.
5 counties? I don't think I should like that. I hate crowds.
I suppose that is why you live in town.
Quite well kept garden this is, Miss Cardew.
So glad you like it, Miss Fairfax.
I had no idea there were any flowers in the country.
Flowers are as common here, Miss Fairfax, as people are in London.
Personally, I don't understand how anybody manages to exist in the country. If anybody, who is anybody does. The country always bores me to death.
That is what the newspapers call agricultural depression, is it not? I believe the aristocracy are suffering very much from it at present. It is almost an epidemic amongst them, I am told. May I offer you some tea, Miss Fairfax?
Thank you. Detestable girl, but I require tea.
Sugar?
No, thank you. Sugar is not fashionable anymore.
Cake or bread and butter?
Bread and butter. Cake is rarely seen at the best houses nowadays.
I'm not Miss Fairfax.
You have filled my tea with lumps of sugar, and now I most distinctly ask for bread and butter. You have given me cake. I am known for the extraordinary gentleness of my nature and the gentleness of my disposition, but I warn you, Miss Cardew, you may go too far.
To save my poor, innocent, trusting boy from the machinations of an illegal girl, no lengths would I not go.
From the moment I saw you, I distrusted you. I felt you were false and deceitful. I am never deceived in such matters. My first impressions of people are invariably right.
It seems to me, Miss Fairfax, that I'm trespassing on your valuable time. No doubt you have many other calls of a similar character to make in the neighborhood.
Ernest! My Ernest. A moment, Ernest. Are you engaged to be married to this young lady?
To dear little Cecily? Of course not. What could have put such an idea into your pretty little head?
Thank you. You may.
I knew there must be some misunderstanding, Miss Fairfax. The gentleman whose arm is at present round your waist is my guardian, Mr. John Worthing.
I beg your pardon.
This is Uncle Jack.
Jack! Oh!
Here is Ernest.
My own love.
A moment, Ernest. May I ask you, are you engaged to be married to this young lady?
To what young lady? Good heavens!
Yes, to good heavens, Gwendolyn. I mean, to Gwendolyn.
Of course not. What could have put such an idea into your pretty little head?
Thank you. You may.
I knew there must be some slight error. The gentleman who is at present embracing you is my cousin, Mr. Algernon Moncrieff.
Algernon Moncrieff? Oh! Are you called Algernon?
I cannot deny it.
Is your name really John?
I could deny it if I liked. I could deny anything if I liked. However, my name certainly is John. It has been John for years.
A gross deception has been practiced on both of us.
My poor wounded Cecily.
My sweet darling Gwendolyn.
You will call me sister, won't you?
There is just one question I would
about you. Where is your brother Ernest? We are both engaged to be married to your brother Ernest, so it is of some great importance to us to know where your brother Ernest is at present.
Gwendolyn, Cecily, it is very painful for me to be forced to speak the truth. In fact, it is the first time in my life I've ever been reduced to such a painful position. I'm really quite inexperienced at doing anything of the kind. However, I will tell you quite frankly that I have no brother Ernest. I have no brother at all. I've never had a brother in my life, and I certainly have not the smallest intention of ever having one in the future.
No brother? At all?
None.
Had you never a brother of any kind?
Never. Not even of any kind.
I'm afraid it is quite clear that neither of us is engaged to be married to anyone.
It is not a very pleasant position for a young girl to suddenly find herself in, is it?
Let us go into the house. They will hardly venture to come after us there.
No. Men are so cowardly, aren't they?
This ghastly state of things is what you call bunburying, I suppose.
Yes. And a perfectly wonderful bunbury it is too. The most wonderful bunbury I've ever had in my life.
Well, you've no right whatsoever to bunbury here.
That is absurd. One has a right to bunbury wherever one chooses. Every serious bunburyist knows that. Serious bunburyist? Good heavens. Well, one must be serious about something if one wants to have any amusement in life. I happen to be serious about bunburying. What on earth you're serious about, I haven't got the remotest idea. Probably everything I should fancy, of such an absolutely trivial nature.
The only small satisfaction I have in the whole of this wretched business is that your friend Bunbury is quite exploded. You won't be able to go off down to the country quite so often as you used to, dear Algy. And a very good thing, too.
Your brother is a little off colour, isn't he, dear Jack? You won't be able to disappear to London quite so frequently as your wicked custom was. Not a bad thing either.
As for your conduct towards Miss Cardew, I must say that you're taking in a sweet, simple, innocent girl like that quite inexcusable. To say nothing of the fact that she is my ward.
Well, I can think of no possible defence for your deceiving a brilliant, clever, thoroughly experienced young lady like Miss Fairfax. To say nothing of the fact that she is my cousin.
I wanted to be engaged to Gwendolyn, that is all. I love her.
Well, I simply wanted to be engaged to Cecily. I adore her.
There's certainly no chance of your marrying Miss Cardew.
Well, I don't see much likelihood, Jack, of you and Miss Fairfax being united.
That is no business of yours.
If it was my business, I wouldn't talk about it. Muffins? It is very vulgar to talk about one's own business. Only people like stockbrokers do that. And then merely at dinner parties.
How you can sit there calmly eating muffins while we're in this horrible trouble I can't quite make out. You seem to me to be perfectly heartless.
Well, you can't eat muffins in an agitated manner. But it would probably get on my cuffs. One should always eat muffins quite calmly. That's the only way to eat them.
I say, it's perfectly heartless you're eating muffins at all, under the circumstances.
When I'm in trouble, eating is the only thing that consoles me. Indeed, when I'm in any really great trouble, as anyone who knows me intimately will tell you, I refuse everything except food and drink. At the present moment, I'm eating because I'm unhappy. Besides, I am particularly fond of muffins.
There is no reason for me to eat them all in that greedy way.
Why don't you have tea cake? I don't like tea cake.
Suppose a man made his own muffins in his own garden.
But you've just said it's perfectly heartless to eat muffins.
I said it was perfectly heartless of you, under the circumstances. It's a very different thing.
That may be, but the muffins are the same.
Algernon, I wish to goodness you would go.
Well, you can't possibly expect me to leave without having had some dinner first. It is absurd. I never go without having my dinner. No one does. Except vegetarians and people. I have just made arrangements with Dr. Chasuble to be christened at 5:45 under the name of Ernest.
My dear fellow, the sooner you give up that nonsense, the better. I made arrangements this morning with Dr. Chasuble to be christened at 5:30. and I naturally will take the name of Ernest. Gwendolyn would wish it. We can't both be christened Ernest. It's absurd. Besides, I have a perfect right to be christened if I like. There is no evidence that I've ever been christened by anybody. I should think it extremely probable I never was, and so does Dr. Chasuble. It is quite different in your case. You have been christened already.
Yeah, but I've not been christened for years.
You have been christened. That is the important thing.
Quite so. So I know my constitution can handle it. If you're not quite sure about your ever having been christened, I dare say it's rather dangerous you're venturing on it now. It might make you very unwell. You can hardly have forgotten that someone very closely connected to you was very nearly carried off this week in Paris by a severe chill.
You said yourself that severe chill wasn't hereditary.
It usedn't to be, I know. But I dare say it is now. Science is always coming up with wonderful improvements in things.
That is nonsense, Algie. You're never talking anything but nonsense.
Jack, you're at the muffins again. I wish you wouldn't. There's only 2 left. I'm particularly fond of muffins.
But I hate tea cake.
Why on earth then do you have tea cake to be served to your guests? What ideas you have of hospitality?
Algernon, I've already asked you to go. I don't want you here. Why don't you go?
I haven't quite finished my tea yet. And there's still 1 muffin.
Done seems to me to show they have some sense of shame left.
They have been eating muffins. That looks like repentance.
They don't seem to notice us at all. Couldn't you cough?
But I haven't got a cough.
They're looking at us. What effrontery!
They're approaching. That's very forward of them.
Let us preserve a dignified silence.
Certainly. It's the only thing to do now.
This dignified silence seems to produce a most unpleasant effect.
A most distasteful one.
But we will not be the first to speak.
Certainly not.
Mr. Worthing, I have something very particular to ask you. Much depends on your reply.
What? Your common sense is invaluable. Mr. Moncrieff, kindly answer me the following question. Why did you pretend to be my guardian's brother?
In order that I might have an opportunity of meeting you.
It certainly seems a satisfactory explanation, does it not?
Yes, dear, if you can believe him.
I don't. But it does not affect the wonderful beauty of his answer.
True. In matters of grave importance, style, not sincerity, is the vital thing. Mr. Worthing, what answer can you give me for pretending to have a brother? Was it that you might be able to come up to London to see me as often as possible?
Can you doubt it, Miss Fairfax?
I have the gravest doubts upon the subject, but I intend to crush them. This is not a moment for German skepticism. Their answers appear to be quite satisfactory, especially Mr. Worthing's. That seems to have a stamp of truth upon it.
I am more than content with what Mr. Moncrieff said. His voice alone inspires one with absolute confidence.
Then you think we should forgive them?
Yes. I mean, no.
True. I had forgotten. There are principles at stake one cannot surrender. Which one of us should tell them first? The task is not a simple one.
Could we not both speak at the same time?
An excellent idea. I nearly always speak at the same time as other people. Your Christian names are still an insuperable barrier. That is all.
Our Christian names? Is that all? But we are going to be christened this afternoon.
For my sake, you are prepared to do this terrible thing?
I am.
To please me, you are willing to face this fearful ordeal?
I am.
How absurd to talk of the equality of the sexes. Where questions of self-sacrifice are concerned, men are infinitely beyond us.
We are.
There are moments of physical courage of which we women know absolutely nothing.
Darling!
Darling.
Lady Bracknell.
Good heavens.
Gwendolyn, what does this mean?
Merely that I'm engaged to be married to Mr. Worthing, Mama.
Come here. Sit down. Sit down immediately. Hesitation of any kind is a sign of mental decay in the young, physical weakness in the old. Apprised, sir, of my daughter's sudden flight by a trusty maid, whose confidence I purchased by means of a small coin, I followed her at once by a luggage train. Her unhappy father is, I am glad to say, under the impression that she is attending a more than usually lengthy lecture by the University Extension Scheme on the influence of a permanent income. I do not propose to undeceive him. In fact, I've never undeceived him in any question. I would consider it wrong. But of course, you must clearly understand that all communication between yourself and my daughter must cease immediately from this moment. On this point, as indeed on all points, I am firm.
I am engaged to be married to Gwendolen, Lady Bracknell.
You are nothing of the kind, sir. And now, as regards Algernon.
Yes, Aunt Augusta.
May I ask if it is in this house that your poor invalid friend, Mr. Bunbury, resides?
Oh. No. Bunbury doesn't live here. Bunbury lives somewhere else. In fact, Bunbury is dead.
Dead? When did Mr. Bunbury die? His death must have been extremely sudden.
Oh, I killed Bunbury. Poor Bunbury died this afternoon.
What did he die of?
Bunbury? Oh, he was quite exploded.
Was he the victim of a revolutionary outrage? I was not aware that Mr. Bunbury was interested in social legislation. If so, he's well punished for his morbidity.
My dear Aunt Augusta, he was found out. The doctors found out that Bunbury could not live, so Bunbury died.
Well, he seems to have had great confidence in the opinion of his physician. I am glad, however, that he made up his mind at last to some definite course of action and acted under proper medical advice. And now that we finally got rid of this Mr. Bunbury, may I ask, Mr. Worthing, who is that young person whose hand my nephew Algernon is now holding in what seems to me a peculiarly unnecessary manner?
That lady is Miss Cecily Cardew, my ward.
I'm engaged to Cecily, Aunt Augusta.
I beg your pardon?
Mr. Moncrieff and I are engaged to be married, Lady Bracknell.
I do not know whether there is anything peculiarly exciting in the air of this particular part of literature, but the number of engagements that go on seem to me to be exceedingly above the proper average that statistics have laid down for our guidance. I think some preliminary inquiry on my part would not be out of place. Mr. Worthing, is Miss Cardew at all connected with any of the larger railway stations in London? Merely asked for information. Until yesterday, I had no idea that there were any families or persons whose origin was a terminus.
Mrs. Cardew is the granddaughter of the late Mr. Thomas Cardew, 149 Belgrave Square, Gervais Park, Dorking, Surrey, and the Sporran, Fifeshire.
Ah, that sounds not unsatisfactory. 3 addresses always inspire confidence, even in tradesmen. But what proof have I of their authenticity?
I have carefully preserved the court guides of the period. They are open to your inspection, Lady Brown.
I have known strange errors in that publication.
Miss Cardew's family solicitors are Messrs. Markby, Markby, and Markby.
Markby, and Markby. A firm of the very highest position in their profession. Indeed, I'm told that one of the Mr. Markbys is occasionally to be seen at dinner parties. So far, I'm satisfied.
How extremely kind of you, Lady Bracknell. I have also in my possession, you will be pleased to hear, certificates of Miss Cardew's birth, baptism, whooping cough, confirmation, registration, vaccination, and the measles, both English and German variety.
Life crowded with incident, I see, but perhaps so much too exciting for a young girl. I'm not myself in favour of premature experiences. Gwendolyn, the time approaches for our departure. We've not a moment to lose. Mr. Worthing, as a matter of form, I had better ask if Miss Cardew's any little fortune.
Oh, about £130,000 in the funds, that is all. Goodbye, Lady Bracknell. So pleased to have seen you.
About it, Mr. Worthing. £130,000? And in the funds? Miss Cardew seems to me a most attractive young lady now then. Few girls of the present day have any really solid qualities, any of the qualities that last and improve with time. We live, I regret to say, in an age of surfaces. Come over here, dear. Pretty child, your dress is sadly simple, and your hair seems as though nature might have left it. But we can soon alter all that. A thoroughly experienced French maid produces a marvellous result in a very brief space of time. I remember recommending one to young Lady Lansing, and after only 3 months, her own husband did not know her.
Yes, and after 6 months, nobody knew her.
Kindly turn round, sweet child. No, the side view's what I want. Yes, quite as I expected. There are distinct social possibilities in your profile. The 2 weak points of our age are its want of principle and its want of profile. Chin a little higher, dear. Style largely depends on the way the chin is worn. They're worn very high just at present. Algernon!
Yes, Auntie Consta.
There are distinct social possibilities in Miss Cardew's profile.
Cecily is the sweetest, dearest, prettiest girl in the whole world, and I don't care 2p for social possibilities.
Never speak disrespectfully of society, Algernon. Only people who can't get into it do that. Dear child. But of course you must clearly understand that Algernon has nothing but his death to depend on. But I do not approve of mercenary marriages. When I married Lord Bracknell, I had no fortune of any kind. But I never dreamed of allowing that to stand in my way. Well, I suppose I must give my consent.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell.
Cecily, you may kiss me.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell.
You may also address me as Aunt Augusta for the future.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
The marriage, I think, had better take place quite soon.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta. To speak frankly, I'm not in favour of long engagements. They give people the opportunity of finding out each other's character, which is never advisable.
Pray excuse me for interrupting you, Lady Bracknell. This engagement is quite out of the question. I am Miss Cardew's guardian, and she cannot marry without my consent until she comes of age. That consent I absolutely decline to give.
Upon what grounds, may I ask? Algernon is an extremely, I may almost say, an ostentatiously eligible young man. He has, well, nothing, but he looks everything. What more can one desire?
It pains me very much to have to speak to you frankly about your nephew, Lady Bracknell. But the truth is that I do not approve at all of his moral character. I suspect him of being untruthful.
Untruthful? My nephew Algie? Impossible, he's an Oxonian.
I fear there can be no possible doubt about the matter. This afternoon, during my temporary absence in London, on an important question of romance, he obtained admission to my house by means of being my brother. False pretenses, I may add. Continuing his disgraceful deception, he succeeded in the course of the afternoon in alienating the affections of my only ward. He subsequently stayed to tea and devoured every single muffin. What makes his conduct all the more heartless is that he was perfectly well aware from the first that I have no brother. I've never had a brother, and I don't intend to have a brother, not even of any kind. I distinctly told him so myself yesterday afternoon.
Mr. Worthing, after careful consideration, I have decided entirely to overlook my nephew's conduct to you.
That is extremely generous of you, Lady Bracknell. My own decision, however, is unalterable. I decline to give my consent.
Come over here, sweet child. How old are you, dear?
Well,
I'm really only 18, but I always been to 20 at evening parties.
You are perfectly right in making some slight alteration. Indeed, no woman should ever be quite accurate about her age. It looks so calculating. 18, but admitting to 20 at evening parties. Well, it will not be very long before you are of age and free from the restraints of tutelage. So, I don't think your guardian's consent is, after all, a matter of any importance.
Pray excuse me for interrupting you again, Lady Bracknell, but it is only fair to tell you that, according to the terms of her grandfather's will, Miss Cardew does not come legally of age until she is 35.
That does not seem to me to be a grave objection. 35 is a very attractive age. London society is full of women of the very highest birth who have, of their own free choice, remained 35 for years. Lady Doubletor is an instance in point. To my knowledge, she has been 35 ever since she arrived at the age of 40. I do not see any reason why our dear Cecily should not be even still more attractive at the age in which you mentioned that she is at present. There will be a large accumulation of property.
Audrey, could you wait for me till I was 35?
Of course I could, Cecily, you know I could.
Yes, I felt it instinctively. But I could not wait all that time. I hate waiting even 5 minutes for anybody. It always makes me rather cross. I'm not punctual myself, I know, but I do like punctuality in others, and waiting, even to be married, is quite out of the question.
And what is to be done?
I do not know, Mr. Moncrieff.
Mr. Worthing, as Miss Cardew quite positively states that she cannot wait till she is 35, a remark which I am bound to say seems to me to show a somewhat impatient nature, I would beg of you to reconsider your decision.
My dear Lady Bracknell, the matter is entirely in your own hands. The moment you consent to my marriage with Gwendolyn, I will most gladly allow your nephew to form an alliance with my ward.
You must be quite aware that what you propose is out of the question.
That a passionate celibacy is all that any of us can look forward to.
That is not the destiny I propose for Gwendolyn. Algernon, of course, can choose for himself. Come, dear, we've missed 5, if not 6 trains. To miss any more might expose us to comment on the platform.
Everything is quite ready for the christenings.
The christening, sir? Is not that somewhat premature?
Both these gentlemen have expressed a desire for immediate baptism.
At their age, the idea is grotesque and irreligious. Algernon, I forbid you to be baptized. I will not hear of such excesses. Lord Bracknell would be highly displeased if he found that was the way in which you wasted your time and money.
And am I to understand, then, that there are to be no christenings at all this afternoon?
I don't think that, as things are now, it would be of much practical value to either of us, Dr. Chasuble.
I am grieved to hear such sentiments from you, Mr. Worthing. They savor of the heretical views of the Anabaptists, views which I have completely refuted in 4 of my unpublished sermons. However, as your present mood seems one peculiarly secular, I will retire to the church at once. Indeed, I've just been informed by the pew opener that for the past hour and a half, Miss Prism has been waiting for me in the vestry.
Miss Prism? Did I hear you mention Miss Prism?
Yes, Lady Bracknell, I'm on my way to join her.
Pray, allow me to detain you for a moment. Is this Miss Prism a female of repellent aspect remotely connected with education?
She is the most cultivated of ladies and is the very picture of respectability.
Which is obviously the same person. May I ask what position she holds in your household?
I am a celibate, madam.
Miss Prism, Lady Bracknell, has been for the last 3 years Miss Cardew's esteemed governess and valued companion.
In spite of what I hear of her, I must see her at once. Let her be sent for.
Ah, she approaches. She is nigh.
I've been expecting you in the vestry for an hour and 3/4, dear Canon. Where have you been?
Prism? Come here, Prism. Prism, where is that baby? 28 years ago, Prism, you left Lord Bracknell's house, number 104, Upper Grosvenor Street, in charge of a perambulator that contained a baby of the male sex. You never returned. A few weeks later, after elaborate investigation by the Metropolitan Police, the perambulator was discovered at midnight on the corner of Bayswater. It contained a manuscript of a 3-volume novel of more than usually revolting sentimentality. But the baby was not there. Prism, where is that baby?
Lady Bracknell, I must admit with shame, I do not know. I only wish I did.
The plain facts of the case are these. On the morning of the day you mention, a day that is forever branded on my memory, I prepared as usual to take the baby out of its perambulator. I had with me a somewhat old but capacious handbag in which I had planned to place the manuscript of a work of fiction I had written during my few unoccupied hours. In a moment of mental abstraction, for which I cannot forgive myself, I deposited the manuscript in the bassinet and placed the baby in the handbag.
But where did you deposit the handbag?
Do not ask me, Mr. Worthing.
This is a matter of no small importance to me, Miss Prism. I insist on knowing where you deposited the handbag that contained that infant.
It was in a cloakroom of one of the larger railway stations of London.
What railway station?
Victoria, the Brighton line.
I must retire to my room for a moment. Gwendolyn, wait here for me.
If you are not too long, I will wait for you all my life.
What do you think this means, Lady Bracknell?
I dare not even suspect, Dr. Chasuble. I need hardly tell you that in families of high position, strange coincidences should never occur. They are hardly considered the thing.
Uncle Jack seems strangely agitated.
Poor guardian has a very emotional nature.
This noise is extremely unpleasant. It sounds as if he was having an argument. I dislike arguments very much. They are very vulgar and often convincing.
It has stopped now.
I wish you'd arrive at some conclusion.
Suspense is terrible. I hope it will last.
Is this the handbag, Miss Prism? Examine it carefully before you speak. The happiness of more than one life depends on your answer.
It appears to be mine. Yes, here is the injury received for the upsetting of a Gower Street omnibus in younger and happier days. And here on the lining is the stain caused by an explosion of a temperance beverage, an incident that occurred at Leamington. And here on the lock are my initials. I'd forgotten I had them placed there in an extravagant mood. The bag is undoubtedly mine. It is so delightful to have it so unexpectedly restored to me. It has been a great inconvenience being without it all these years.
Miss Prism, more is restored to you than this handbag. I was the baby you placed in it.
You?
Yes. Mother!
Oh, Mr. Worthing! I'm married!
I'm married. I do not deny that is a serious blow. But after all, cannot repentance wipe out an act of folly? Why should there be one law for men and another for women? Mother, I forgive you!
Mr. Worthing, there is some error. There is the lady who can tell you who you really are.
Lady Bracknell, I hate to seem inquisitive, but would you kindly inform me who I am?
I'm afraid the news I have to give you will not altogether please you. You are the son of my poor sister, Mrs. Moncrieff, and consequently, Algernon's elder brother.
Algy's elder brother? But I have a brother after all. I knew I had a brother! I always said I had a brother! Cecily, how could you have ever doubted I had a brother? Dr. Chasuble, my unfortunate brother. Miss Prism, my unfortunate brother. Gwendolen, my unfortunate brother. Sir, this is my unfortunate brother. Algy, you young scoundrel, you'll have to treat me with more respect in the future. You never behaved to me like a brother in all your life.
Not till today, I think. But I tried my best, though I was a little out of practice.
My own! But what own are you? What is your Christian name now that you've become someone else?
Good heavens, I'd quite forgotten that point. Your decision on the subject of my name is unalterable, I suppose.
I never change, except my affections.
What a noble nature you have, Gwendolyn.
The matter had best be cleared up at once. A moment, Aunt Augusta. At the time when Miss Prism left me in the handbag, had I been christened already?
Every luxury that money could buy had been lavished on you by your fond and doting parents, including christening.
And I was christened and settled. Now, what name was I given? Let me know the words.
Being the eldest, you were naturally christened after your father.
Yes, but what was my father's Christian name?
I cannot at the present moment recall what the General's Christian name was, but I've no doubt he had one. He was an eccentric man, especially in his later years, and that was the result of the Indian climate, and marriage, and digestion, diarrhea, heartburn, other things of that kind.
But Algie, can't you recollect what our father's Christian name was?
My dear boy, we were barely even on speaking terms. He died before I was a year old.
His name would appear in the omnibus of the period, I suppose, Augusta.
The General was essentially a man of peace, except in his domestic life. But I have no doubt that his name would appear in any military directory.
I have the omnibus of the last 40 years are here. These delightful records should have been my constant study. Let's see, M. Generals. Malum, Maxbum, Magley, McCowan. Ugh, what ghastly names they all have. Markby, Migsby, Mobs, Moncrieff. Lieutenant, 1840. Captain, Lieutenant Colonel, Colonel, General, 1869. Christian names. Ernest John. I always told you, Gwendolyn, my name was Ernest, didn't I? Well, it is Ernest after all. I mean, it naturally is Ernest.
Yes, I can now recall the General's Christian name was Ernest. I knew I had some particular reason for disliking the name.
Ernest, my own Ernest. I thought from the first you could have no other name.
Gwendolyn, it's a very terrible thing for a man to find out quite suddenly that all his life has been speaking nothing but the truth. Forgive me.
Yes, for I feel that you are sure to change.
My own one.
Letitia!
Frederick, at last.
Cecily, at last!
Gwendolyn, at last.
My nephew, you seem to be displaying signs of triviality.
On the contrary, Aunt Augusta, I've now realized for the first time in my life the vital importance of being earnest.
Charming day for a white wedding. Would you agree?
Yes.
Muffins?
Thank you.
I'm curious.
And how so?
Have you ever been married?
Yes, unfortunately. Once.
Unfortunately. Did it end unhappily?
The unfortunate part is that it hasn't ended.
Well, I would very much like to try it. Marriage.
All I say is caution. I believe it was Jean-Jacques Rousseau who said, man is or was born free. That is until he is married.
Yes, but I believe it was Voltaire who said, a witty saying proves nothing.
Touché.